Welcome back to the Rugby League Forecast podcast. This is the first edition of the team lists of season 2026. We are now 4 days away from kickoff. Sunday, I can't wait for the games. It'll be the Leeds Rhinos, Brad Arthur's Leeds Rhinos versus Hull KR, the World Club champions. That is on Sunday morning. And then we go straight into back-to-back NRL games, which will be followed by the Cowboys and the Knights. And straight after that game will be the Bulldogs and the St. George Illawarra Dragons, which is going to be the game of the weekend, in my opinion. Let's have a look at the Knights and the Cowboys teams. I'm going to go through the team lists. We'll talk about what the coaches were thinking in certain selections and how we think the teams will go over the weekend. A bit of a preview for the weekend coming. Some people call this weekend round zero. But it is part one of round one. I cannot wait. Let's go through the Knights team, the Newcastle Knights for season 2026. Round one in Vegas, Kalen Ponga at fullback. On the wings, Dominic Young and Greg Marzu. In the centres, Dane Gagai and Bradman Best. The halves, Fletcher Sharp named in the number 6 jersey alongside Dylan Brown in the 7. Up front, Jacob Saifidi, Phoenix Crossland at dummy half, and Trey Mooney in the number 10 jersey. The edges, Dylan Lucas, Jermaine McEwen, and lock in the scrum is Tyson Frizzell. In the 14, Sandon Smith, 15, Matthew Croker, 16, Thomas Kant, and 17, Pasami Solo. And the number 18, Fletcher Hunt, and 19, Francis Manu Leilua. So there you go. That is number 20, Tyson Gamble, 21, Cody Hopwood, 22, James Schiller. Look, they probably aren't going to get a go from 19 onwards unless injuries occur. There's massive raps on this young fella at Newcastle, Cody Hopwood. He is a middle forward, and there are big raps on this young fella. I've got no doubt with the lack of forwards they have and the lack of depth in the forwards Newcastle in season 2026. I'm pretty certain that Cody Hopwood will get a fair crack in first grade this year. Every club gets injuries, whether it's in the forwards, the backs. It is a very, very long season, the NRL season these days. 27 regular season rounds, and if you make the finals, that can be up to 4 weeks. That's 31 weeks in total for whoever wins the premiership. With 3 buys in there and possibly a week off before the prelim, I should say, for those top 4 teams if they win week 1. So let's have a look at this Knights side. Kalen Ponga named at fullback. No surprises there. There was talk about possibly moving Kalen Ponga into the halfback jersey. For me, personally, I think that would be a really bad decision just based on his concussion history. I do not think that would have been a smart selection. So the fact that he's named at fullback, I think, is the best option for now. Now, I'm in the minority. Fletcher Sharp starting in the halves. I like it. And a lot of people don't like it. I can understand why. I genuinely can understand why. Just in my opinion, I just think he's too good. I think he's too good to be stuck on the wing. You could, put him in centre, but in saying that, I think you want his hands on the football as much as possible. And I thought he did a decent job in the 6 jersey last year. I don't think he was a superstar in that 6, but there were many, many times I thought he played really, really well, especially up at that game up at Suncorp Stadium for Magic Round against South Sydney. He scored a hat-trick basically because his support play in that number 6 jersey was so good. He's one of the best support players in the NRL. His short kicking game isn't too bad. He's a good defender. Me personally, I think Fletcher Sharp needs to be in the halves because in both the trial matches for the Newcastle Knights, I thought the first week when he lined up alongside Sandon Smith against the Dragons, I'm pretty sure it was, I thought there was a bit more creativity in the halves from Fletcher Hunt compared to when Smith lined up against Dylan Brown. So I can also understand the selection of Sandon Smith at 14. He can cover the hooker role. He can cover the halves. He can come on like a Dylan Walker, play a middle forward ball playing sort of style. He's I don't mind the Sandon Smith starting in the 14. I didn't think there was much creativity involved in the trial match between the Knights and the Bulldogs a couple of weeks ago when Smith and Brown were in the halves. A lack of creativity there, I reckon. I just thought they looked a bit more dangerous in attack with Fletcher Sharp in the halves. And I get it, they're trials, but for me, I think you do take plenty out of trials because I believe that, if Smith and Brown won that game in week 2 of the trial matches against the Bulldogs, if there was more creativity in attack, I probably think they start in the halves. So really interesting to see a couple of selections there. Jermaine McEwen in the second row. It was out of him and Thomas Kant. Thomas Kant was really strong in the preseason challenge. But look, at the end of the day, he's got a bench spot in the number 16 jersey there. Pasami Solo from the Canberra Raiders, he'll be in the 17. There was talk about Trey Mooney not starting at front row. Well, they were silly rumours and silly lies. He's starting in the front row in the number 10 jersey, replacing Leo Thompson. Jacob Saifidi, as I mentioned, in the number 8. Phoenix Crossland, there was talk about him, whether he'd start at 9, 13, come off the bench. So I think he's a good little number 9 thing, Phoenix Crossland. He's played for his country. He's played final series for the Newcastle Knights back in 2023 and 2024. He's a good little player. Really good defender too, Phoenix Crossland. Really strong defender. With his blonde locks, he reminds me of a young Nathan Brown back in the mid-90s. Let's look at the Cowboys now. 1, Scott Drinkwater. 2, Braden Burns. 5, Murray Talangi on the other wing. In the centres, Jackson Purdue and Tom Chester. In the halves, Jake Clifford and Tom Dearden at halfback. 8, Cohen Hess. 9, Reed Marnie. 10, Jason Taumalolo. 11, Helam Lukey. 12, Sam McIntyre. 13, Reuben Cotter. On the bench, Sonny Luke, Thomas McKaylee at 15, Harrison Edwards 16, and Kai O'Donnell number 17. Griffin named on the extended bench there. Number 18, Griffin Neame. 19, John Bateman. Liam Sutton, Matt Lodge, and Robert Derby, the other reserves. So really interesting to see there. Let's talk about the Cowboys side. Braden Burns expected to be named on the wing. I thought personally Robert Derby had a really good trial, week 1 of the trials for the Cowboys. I thought he was really strong. But in saying that, I do believe that Braden Burns had a really good game against the Penrith Panthers in week 2. I thought he was really strong. He looks fit. He looks bigger. I think Braden Burns is a really underrated player. A really good finisher too. So I'm happy to see Braden Burns named on the wing if I'm a Cowboys fan. Jackson Purdue named in the centres. There was talk about whether or not he'd start in the halves alongside Tom Dearden. Really happy for Jackson Purdue to start in the centres for this year because I've got no doubt the halves is probably his long-term ideal plan at the Cowboys, but just for the moment, just for the time being, I think his best position so early on in his career, at 21 years of age, his best position, I think, at the moment is centre. Thomas Chester named in the 4 jersey. Zach Laybutt, guys, as we know, a couple of weeks ago, he did a high tackle, suspended, sin bin. He's suspended for up to a couple of matches, I believe. So he will be out of selection, but Tom Chester comes straight in, and I tell you what, if he has a big game, Tom Chester, he can hold on to this spot. So Zach Laybutt, that may have been the worst thing coming for him. Personally, I believe Laybutt will come straight back into the side, but this is a really big opportunity for young Thomas Chester to show the Cowboys and their fans exactly what he can do. Jake Clifford, I thought his trial performances were fantastic. Really strong. He played week 1 at halfback and then week 2 at 5'8". I thought his passing selection was spot on. His defense was really strong and his kicking game is his biggest strength. So the kicking game, Jake Clifford, a big kick on him. He's got a big boot on him alongside Tom Dearden in the 7. We know his defense. We know what a leader he is. He's just an origin player, a player that never gives up with also a great kicking game. So no surprise there after the trial performances that Jake Clifford and Tom Dearden named in the 6 and 7. Reed Marnie, sure they lose Reece Robson, but Reed Marnie is close to a like replacement, in my opinion. Probably I'd have Reece Robson just a little bit ahead of Reed Marnie in terms of quality of dummy half. But in saying that, I believe Reed Marnie looked really sharp against the Penrith Panthers a couple of weeks ago up in Queensland for that trial match. Now, it's really interesting here that they've got Griffin Neame named on the 18 jersey. Now, all the talk was he would not be right to go in this game. He will come back early in the season, but he is still recovering from an injury, I believe. But the fact he's named in the 18 jersey gives me confidence he could play in that game. If that is the case, guys, if he is ready to play, I've got no doubt he starts this game. And you probably look at either Cohen Hess or Jason Taumalolo coming on from the bench. Personally, I think Jason Taumalolo will start from the bench if Griffin Neame is right and ready to go, who will go straight into that starting spot. Kai O'Donnell, great to see him named in that 17 jersey. He was outstanding on the edge on the second row position for the Cowboys over the trial matches. Sonny Luke, up 28 years old. He's been around the Tramps for a while now. I think he's a really, really good player. Just didn't fit Penrith. He was expected to be the dummy half after Api Coruscant, but the way he played, it just didn't suit Penrith's structure. Mitch Kenny just had better service from dummy half, a much simpler dummy half that was probably a better defender, to be fair. Sonny Luke has gone up there to have a crack at first grade, and he's just lacked that. He's struggled with injuries in his career. He's in his late 20s now, but he has just lacked getting consistent first grade under his belt. So I'm hoping this year's a big one for young Sonny Luke. Well, he's not so young anymore. He's been around, as I mentioned, for a while now. But in saying that, I reckon I've got no doubt that he'll start. He'll play the majority of the season from the bench. I just think he's a really young, creative dummy half, and I think that's exactly what they need. Reid Marnie should not be expected to play 80 minutes a week. Sonny Luke coming on for that final 10 minutes in the first half or final 20 minutes of the second half could really change the game, especially in attack if they're coming behind to try and come back and win a game. Let's go to the next game, the Bulldogs and the Dragons. This is, of course, at the same ground, Allegiant Stadium at 3:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Just before I get to this game, I'm going to preview who I think will win, who my tip will be for the Cowboys and the Knights. I'm not going to pretend I'm a rugby league expert. I've never played the game at a high quality level, but I think everyone is entitled to have an opinion on the best game of all, because that's one of the things I love about this game is it's so fucking hard to come up with an opinion that's right. And it's a good challenge as a rugby league fan. Personally, for me, I think Cowboys win. Would not surprise me at all if Newcastle come out and win this well. They were really disappointing in their trial matches. Cowboys, defensively, I'm really worried about them. I believe they're going to make the 8 this year. I know that's a random call, but I think they're one of the teams that could actually do something this year. Not necessarily win the competition. I don't think they'll win the comp, but I could see them having a really good year out of nowhere, to be honest. Don't know why. I just think they've got too many Origin players. Their attack is just too strong. If their defense clicks, they could do really special things. So I think the Cowboys win, but probably thinking maybe around 24 points to 12, something like that, maybe 1 to 12. But in saying that, who knows? It's a real 50-50, that game. Really looking forward to that game. They're followed by the second game. Let's have a look at the Bulldogs team against the Dragons. Connor Tracy at fullback, Jacob Carraz and Marcelo Montoya on the wings, Bronson Sherry and Stephen Crichton in the centres, Matt Burton, Lachlan Galvin in the halves, Max King, Bailey Hayward replacing Reid Marnie as the full-time dummy half at the Bulldogs, Sam Hughes replacing Leo Thompson, who is out for the opening couple of months, I believe, due to a calf strain. So Sam Hughes, great to see him back, and he will be playing a large chunk of that first grade in those opening couple of months, replacing Leo Thompson. Really good underrated player, Sam Hughes. He's had an injury-riddled last couple of years in his career, hoping he can stay on the field and play a lot of consistent first grade. Really underrated front rower in the National Rugby League, I believe. Viliami Kikau on the edge, alongside Jacob Preston and Jamin Salmon locking the scrum for the Canterbury Bulldogs in this match. On the bench, Kurt Mans, Tilly Tupanua, Harry Hayes. Great to see him on the bench alongside Josh Curran in the 17 jersey. He will end up being a Perth Bear next year from 2027 onwards. I believe it's a 4-year deal. Sean O'Sullivan named 19, 20, Jake Turpin, and Nari Tuala, 21, 22, Jonathan Sewer, 23, Akalasimi Jones. So they are coached by Cameron Serraldo, as we all know. What a job he has done since he's come into the Bulldogs from 2023 onwards. Didn't make the finals first year. The last couple of years, there is something special happening at the Bulldogs. Obviously, the question marks there were who would be fullback. Connor Tracy, I believe a lot of people expected him to be the fullback to at least start the season. The halves, we didn't know which way it was going to go. I think the majority of rugby league fans, including myself, believed they would at least start the season with Matt Burton at 6, Lachlan Galvin at 7. The big news is Matt Burton is playing in this game after the hamstring injury against Newcastle 2 weeks ago. And I am really looking forward to this game for the Bulldogs. If I'm a Bulldogs fan going to Vegas, you must be very, very fucking excited. Sean O'Sullivan, Personally, I just think when he came on against Newcastle at halfback, Lachlan Galvin moved to 5'8", they look like a better team. So going to be really interesting to see if Sean O'Sullivan gets a run in this game. I don't think he will, But in saying that, he is lined up in the number 19 jersey. They may make a couple of changes before kick-off on the day. Jake Turpin is that backup cover for lock and dummy half, and Nari Tuala, Jonathan Sewer. So Sewer, I think, is a good replacement if a winger goes down. Leo Thompson out, as I said. Sam Hughes in the number 10 jersey. Bailey Hayward's a big watch in this game. Defensively, really, really good. Struggled in the semi-final against Melbourne last year. Struggled to make a difference in attack. Struggled to have the fitness. He's nowhere near as fit as what Reid Marnie was at the back end of last year. So really interested to see if Bailey Hayward can become that long-term 80-minute number 9. Personally, I believe that that's probably what they want. They want a number 9. Kurt Mann on the bench. He's best coming on playing. He can play 9, but he's best to come on and play as that ball playing lock forward to replace Jamin Salmon throughout the game. So there's the Doggies team. Let's have a look at the Dragons now. At fullback, Clint Gutherson, the wingers, Christian Tuapoloto, and on the other wing, Setu 2. Really looking forward to Setu 2. I'll touch on him shortly. Moses Sully and Valentine Holmes. In the centres, the halves, Kyle Flanagan at 6, Daniel Atkinson at 7. Up front, Umro Gula, Damien Cook and Toby Couchman. 11, Luciano Leilua. 12, Jaden Sewer. 13, lock in the scrum is Hamish Stewart. On the bench, Hame Saleh, Josh Kerr, Blake Laurie, Ryan Couchman, and 18, King Tongia, 19, David Farley, Jacob Halangahu, Matthew Feagai, and 22, Tyrell Sloan. They are coached by, of course, Shane Flanagan, who is now in his 3rd season in charge at the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Just having a look at that lineup there. They are, of course, missing Dylan Egan, who would have been starting on that edge. I believe Luciano Leilua would have been coming on from the bench at some stage through the game, but he starts in that 11 jersey today. I thought Leilua looked good in the trial matches. I think he looks really fit. Apparently, in rugby league circles, it is known that Luciano Leilua has been one of the standout trainers at the Dragons over the preseason. Yeah, look, I think Valentine Holmes, we weren't able to see him in the trials due to a niggling injury. He's back. He will make a big difference. Damien Cook, look, he's lost a bit of speed. He's getting older, still offers a lot, plenty in attack, especially in attack. He can still offer a lot in attack. He's a really good support player as well. Hamish Stewart, he's a big watch, the number 13. I believe he could be the 13 at this club for about 10 to 15 years. I reckon he could be a one-club player. There's something about Hamish Stewart and the Dragons that I absolutely love. Christian Tuapoloto, he's had hamstring injuries over the last 12 months. Great to see him starting. He was in a bit of doubt a month ago over whether or not he'd play in this game. Setu 2, a 25-year-old from the New Zealand Warriors, hasn't been able to crack first grade on a consistent basis. Really interested to see how he goes this year on the wing. He beat David Farley to win that wing spot, I should say. Big watch Kyle Flanagan and Atkinson in the halves. I thought they really struggled. Individually, I thought they were pretty good against South Sydney, but together, linking up in a backline play, I thought their passing game was really poor. Their passing selections were poor. Daniel Atkinson, look, he had some really classy moments, a couple of line breaks. Kyle Flanagan almost scored once or twice. Personally, I believe they could end up being a really good halves combination. I have severe doubts over the Dragons, not just in this game, but in season 2026. I think the Bulldogs win this 13+. I reckon they win it really comfortably. I could see a scoreline of around 34 points to 6. I could really see the Dogs. And the reason I say that is because I watched the edge defense of the Dragons closely. And I get it, guys. Moses Sully changed edges from one edge to the other. Valentine Holmes was out. David Farley played in the centres, but their edge defence, the way they slided over defensively, it was very slow up against the Bulldogs' edge of Kickow and the edge of South Sydney, which were respectively reserve graders. They were able to score points on those edges. They still had Gutherson in that game. They had Tuapoloto in that game. They had Farley replacing Holmes. They still had Sully. They still had Setu too. But I felt like the defence on the edges was a huge concern. And you look at the Bulldogs in attack, Viliami Kikau on one edge, on the left edge in the second row position, Jamin Salmon on the right, Jacob Preston on the right, I should say, the number 12 for Canterbury. I just think they're too clinical at the moment, Canterbury. I could see them making the grand final in season 2026. They are building and building nicely. I think Sam Hughes is in for a big game. I really do worry about the forward pack. I mean, look, Toby Couchman, he's a good, Amro Gula is a good pickup. Toby Couchman, yeah, look, he's a good player. He has had injuries over the last couple of years. I hope he can get through the game. But, Hamish Stewart's still young in his career. Dylan Egan, I do believe, is a big loss. And there is absolutely a world where the Dragons can win this game. The Bulldogs away from home, playing overseas, different conditions, different arena, different environment. All those things do play a factor. But I just believe that the Bulldogs, they looked really, really good in that trial match against the Newcastle Knights. I understand Newcastle had a few players out. I understand that it was against the Knights, who were the wooden spooners last year. I just think the Bulldogs win this well. I just think, the halves have played together now for around 13, 14, 15 games. Matt Burton and Lachlan Galvin. The noise is a bit quieter now at Canterbury after the Galvin stuff has settled down. There are massive doubts whether or not this halves combination between Flanagan and Atkinson can work. I just think the Dragons are unfortunately in for a long season. I'd love to see the Dragons do well. Got a couple of good mates, especially one of my mates, Peter Kemp. I'd love to see the Dragons do well for him, but in saying that, I just unfortunately think they could struggle this year. Still think they're waiting for that big front rower. As I mentioned, Toby Couchman is good. He's a really good player, but I just think Sam Hughes, Max King played Origin last year. Bailey Haywood, if he has a good game, watch out. He can be a little creative hooker as well, and I think he'll add a nice little kicking game to the Bulldogs' attack. Reid Marnie had a good kicking game from from dummy half, but I reckon Bailey Haywood would have a nice kicking game on him as well. I don't know if they lose overly too much in that position in terms of kicking. Really looking forward to this game. I just think Bulldogs 13 plus. So I'm going to go Cowboys head to head. Cowboys, I reckon, 24 points to 12, something like that over the Newcastle Knights, and 34 points to 6, or something like that around that scoreline to the Dragons. I just don't know if Dragons can score overly many points against the Bulldogs' defence. They were the best defensive side last year. I think the Bulldogs arriving to Vegas earlier than all the other three teams. I think that's a good thing. Help them climatise to the conditions, help them settle in, and they've had a day off. Yesterday was their day off, so I hope they partied. I hope they had a good time. I hope they get it all out of your system, and then from today onwards, focus on winning that fucking game on Sunday. Really important for these four sides. Really, really important to start well in the NRL season. Sure, it's a long season, but after about 4 to 6 weeks, you get a real gauge on who will be good in the year, and you want to be one of those sides that people are looking up to and really appreciating. That is the first team lists and preview for Vegas 2026. Thank you for listening. This is the Rugby League Forecast podcast. You know the drill, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe on YouTube and please follow me on Spotify. Now, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I've got 3 big shows coming up. 3 of some of the biggest shows of the year. 3 big season previews. I wanted to leave my season previews until the very, very end. I wanted to leave it until just before kickoff, a few days before. I wanted to review and sit down and watch all the trial games and review and have a look at different positions, different players to see how they're doing in certain areas. Guys, I cannot wait to do these season previews. So that starts tomorrow. There'll be 3 days of season previews, 3 episodes, 3 shows on YouTube. Cannot wait. Thank you for your support, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast today. Cheers.